Hold on, because Claressa Shields just turned the conversation around Papoose into something nobody expected. And if you think this is just another jealous girlfriend headline, you're already missing the real story. The undefeated boxing champion has never been known for biting her tongue. But now social media is buzzing over claims that Claressa went off on Facebook while discussing women allegedly sliding into Papoose's DMs. Yeah, Papoose's DMs. But here's where it gets interesting. Because Claressa has spent months making one message extremely clear. Papoose is her man, she's happy, and internet criticism isn't changing that. She has publicly defended their relationship, fired back at people questioning it, and even confronted online commentary surrounding Papoose and Remy Ma. So why would women allegedly messaging Pap suddenly become a conversation now? That's the question nobody seems to be asking. And before anybody starts turning rumors into facts, there's something important you need to know. The specific Facebook claims circulating around this story still needs solid verification. But the surrounding tension? That is very real. Because Claressa has already shown that when people come online playing with her relationship, she doesn't always ignore them. She responds. And sometimes she responds like she's entering round 12 with 30 seconds left. But there's an unexpected twist here. The biggest issue may not be women wanting Papoose at all. It may be what this reaction reveals about how intensely their relationship is being watched, and why almost every woman who gets mentioned around Pap suddenly becomes another internet investigation. Because once you see what happened before this story hits completely differently. And this is exactly where you need to pay attention, because Claressa Shields reacting strongly to conversations surrounding Papoose isn't happening in a vacuum. Their relationship has been under a microscope almost from the moment the public realized there was something serious happening between them. Every picture, every interview, every comment, and every social media exchange gets analyzed by people looking for the next clue. So when claims involving women allegedly entering Papoose's direct messages start circulating, you already know the internet isn't going to treat that like some ordinary relationship situation. But there's a detail we cannot ignore. The specific Facebook claim being circulated needs verification before anyone repeats it as Claressa's confirmed statement. Screenshots can be cropped. Captions can remove context. Old posts can suddenly resurface and get presented like they happened 5 minutes ago. And celebrity gossip moves so quickly that one account can post an interpretation in the morning and, by nighttime, hundreds of people are repeating that interpretation like they personally watched everything happen. That doesn't mean there's no story here. There absolutely is. Because Claressa has publicly shown that she is willing to defend her relationship. She isn't somebody who always sits quietly while strangers online decide what she supposedly thinks. If she disagrees with something, there's a decent chance audiences are eventually going to hear her perspective. And that personality makes this entire situation combustible. Remember, Claressa comes from boxing. Confrontation is literally built into her professional world. She has spent years walking into arenas knowing another elite athlete is standing across from her with one goal: beat her. You don't reach Claressa's level by being intimidated easily. That competitive confidence doesn't magically disappear when she logs onto social media. But relationships aren't boxing matches. And the internet definitely isn't a referee. That's why every emotional reaction gets magnified. Now think about Papoose for a moment. His public identity has been connected to relationship conversations for years because of his history with Remy Ma. For a long time, audiences viewed Papoose through the lens of loyalty and commitment. That reputation became so powerful that his personal life sometimes attracted as much conversation as his music. Then Claressa entered the picture. Suddenly, you had one of boxing's most outspoken champions connected romantically to a rapper whose previous marriage had been watched by hip-hop audiences for years. There was almost no possibility that relationship was going to exist quietly online. And now we arrive at these alleged direct messages. If women are actually messaging Papoose romantically, that alone wouldn't exactly be shocking. He's famous. Famous people receive unsolicited messages constantly. Athletes, rappers, actors, influencers, they all have strangers entering their inboxes every day. The more interesting question is why this alleged situation became public conversation. Was Claressa simply responding to people provoking her? Was something taken out of context? Was the message aimed at one specific person? Or is social media combining separate comments into one dramatic storyline? Those are very different possibilities. And until the original material is authenticated and viewed in full context, anybody confidently telling you exactly what happened is moving faster than the evidence. But here's what makes the situation fascinating anyway. The internet isn't really arguing about direct messages. It's arguing about security. People are asking whether Claressa trusts Papoose. They're asking whether women pursuing him bothers her. They're asking whether responding publicly gives outsiders too much power over the relationship. And then another group is saying something completely different. They're saying Claressa is simply setting boundaries publicly and refusing to let strangers disrespect her relationship. Same situation. Two completely different interpretations. That tells you something important about celebrity culture right now. Audiences don't just watch relationships anymore. They participate in them. People choose sides. They analyze body language. They search old interviews. They compare captions. They monitor who follows whom. Somebody removes a photograph and suddenly thousands of strangers become detectives. And Papoose and Claressa are almost perfectly designed for that environment because their personalities create contrast. Claressa is outspoken. Papoose often appears more measured publicly. When one person talks loudly and the other stays relatively quiet, audiences start treating the silence like another statement. That can become dangerous because silence can mean almost anything. Maybe Papoose doesn't care about the alleged messages. Maybe he handles private matters privately. Maybe there's nothing significant happening at all. Without evidence, those possibilities remain possibilities. But there's another name hovering over every conversation surrounding these two. Remy Ma. No matter how much Papoose and Claressa move forward publicly, some viewers continue dragging the previous marriage into every new development. If Claressa discusses loyalty, people mention Remy. If Papoose talks about relationships, people mention Remy. If somebody allegedly enters his direct messages, people immediately start wondering whether there's another woman about to become relevant. And that is where this story takes a much stranger turn. Because once people started examining who Claressa may have been responding to, the conversation stopped being simply about random women sending messages. Suddenly, viewers wanted to know whether one specific interaction had triggered everything. And if that interaction is what people think it is, then the direct messages might not even be the most interesting detail. The timing might be. And timing is exactly where you should slow down and look closer, because celebrity stories can completely change depending on when a comment was made. Something Claressa Shields said weeks or months earlier can suddenly resurface beside a fresh headline and make viewers believe she responded to something that happened yesterday. That's why the original post matters. Without the full post, timestamp, context, and verified account behind it, nobody should confidently tell you that one specific woman or one specific direct message caused Claressa to react. But the internet doesn't wait for context. It sees Papoose, Claressa, and another woman in the same headline, and immediately the theories start multiplying. Some people interpret the alleged direct message situation as evidence that Claressa is being protective of her relationship. Others see it as insecurity. Another group thinks people are deliberately provoking her because they know she might respond, and every response generates another round of viral content. That third possibility deserves more attention, because if you already know a celebrity reacts when you mention a certain subject, what happens next? People keep mentioning it. Not necessarily because something new happened, but because they know there's a chance of getting another reaction. And reactions are valuable online. They create screenshots, clips, debates, reposts, and headlines. Suddenly, the celebrity isn't just responding to the story. The response becomes the story. Claressa is especially vulnerable to that cycle because being outspoken is genuinely connected to her public personality. She has built her career by believing she can beat whoever stands across from her. She doesn't present herself as timid, and she isn't known for pretending criticism doesn't exist. That confidence works beautifully in boxing. Social media is different. Online there is no final bell. You can win an argument at noon and wake up to 3,000 new comments the next morning. And that's where Papoose's approach becomes an interesting contrast. He often appears far less interested in publicly responding to every individual opinion surrounding his relationship. That doesn't necessarily mean he agrees with what people are saying. It doesn't mean he disagrees either. It simply means viewers have less material from him to analyze. So what happens? People analyze Claressa twice as hard. Every phrase becomes evidence. Every emotional response becomes a supposed clue. And every mention of women around Papoose gets treated like a threat to the relationship. But here's the uncomfortable question. What if the women allegedly entering his direct messages aren't actually the biggest issue? What if the bigger problem is thousands of strangers trying to convince Claressa that every woman around Papoose should concern her? That can create pressure even when nothing meaningful is happening privately. Imagine opening your phone and seeing strangers tagging you underneath photographs of your boyfriend. Imagine people sending you screenshots with no context. Imagine accounts deliberately mentioning an ex because they know it will generate engagement. Eventually, even somebody with enormous confidence can get irritated. But irritation is not proof of relationship trouble. That distinction matters. And then we have Remy Ma. Her name continues appearing because the public spent years watching her relationship with Papoose. For many fans, those memories didn't disappear simply because the relationship changed. So every time Papoose's current relationship becomes news, somebody inevitably brings Remy into the comments. That creates another layer Claressa has to navigate. She isn't only dating a famous man. She's dating somebody whose previous relationship became deeply embedded in hip-hop culture. There are viewers who still romanticize that marriage. There are viewers who support Papoose moving forward. There are viewers who support Claressa. And there are people who simply want maximum chaos because chaos is entertaining. Put all those audiences underneath one Facebook post and you basically have gasoline sitting beside a match. But we still need receipts. If Claressa specifically identified women messaging Papoose, the original authenticated comments matter. If she accused a particular person of crossing a boundary, the exact language matters. If screenshots exist, they need context. Without those things, we cannot turn online speculation into established fact. And strangely enough, that makes the story more revealing. Because look at how quickly people accepted the premise. The headline didn't need to prove that Papoose had done anything wrong. It didn't even need to establish exactly who these alleged women were. All it needed was the idea of women in his inbox. Immediately, audiences began discussing whether Claressa should be worried. But why? Receiving a message and entertaining a message are two completely different things. A celebrity cannot control who contacts them. What matters in a relationship is how they respond. And right now, there is no credible basis for pretending we know what private conversations Papoose is having simply because somebody allegedly contacted him. That's where the narrative starts shifting. Because maybe this isn't a story about women chasing Papoose. Maybe it's about Claressa discovering just how aggressively strangers will test the boundaries of a relationship once that relationship becomes public entertainment. And there's one more detail people keep overlooking. The louder the conversation becomes, the more pressure lands on Papoose himself to say something. Which raises the question everybody is eventually going to ask. What happens if he finally does? And if Papoose does decide to address all of this directly, that could completely change the temperature of the conversation because right now everybody seems to be speaking around him. People are debating what Claressa Shields allegedly said. They're debating who might be contacting him. They're debating whether Remy Ma somehow belongs in the conversation. Meanwhile, the man sitting at the center of all these theories doesn't need to say much for people to create an entire storyline around him. That's what makes silence so powerful in celebrity culture. When somebody doesn't immediately respond, audiences start writing the response for them. One person says Papoose is staying quiet because he doesn't want drama. Somebody else claims the silence means Claressa is handling everything. Another person decides he must secretly be enjoying the attention. But none of those interpretations automatically becomes true simply because it sounds believable. And that brings us back to the direct messages. Even if women are contacting Papoose, there's an enormous missing piece between receiving attention and participating in something inappropriate. That distinction seems obvious, yet it disappears almost immediately when social media starts discussing relationships. Think about it. If someone sends you a message you never requested, what exactly have you done wrong? Nothing. The meaningful question would be whether that attention is being encouraged, returned, or hidden from a partner. And without credible evidence showing those things, there's no responsible way to accuse Papoose of behavior nobody has established. But that hasn't stopped the internet from turning the alleged messages into a referendum on Claressa. Some commenters may ask why she would even acknowledge women trying to get Papoose's attention. Others might argue that publicly drawing boundaries shows confidence rather than insecurity. And here's where things get psychologically interesting. Claressa has spent her entire professional career controlling the environment around her through preparation, discipline, and performance. Inside the ring, if somebody challenges her, she can answer with skill. Online, there is no equivalent. You cannot outbox a rumor. You cannot knock out an anonymous account. You cannot train for a screenshot somebody might post at 2 in the morning. And you definitely cannot stop strangers from messaging someone you're dating. That lack of control is exactly what makes social media relationship drama so exhausting. But Claressa also understands something many people criticizing her may overlook. Public figures are still human beings. Fame doesn't magically remove jealousy, annoyance, boundaries, or frustration. Being a world champion doesn't mean you suddenly stop reacting when people deliberately test you. The question is whether reacting helps. Because every response creates oxygen. Every comment gives another account something to repost. Every clapback becomes another headline. And suddenly, a situation that might have disappeared in 24 hours survives for a week. That's the trap. The more Claressa tries to correct what she believes people are getting wrong, the more material the internet receives to keep discussing her relationship. And there's another unexpected consequence. Papoose becomes more desirable as a topic precisely because Claressa reacts. Every woman photographed near him becomes interesting. Every old clip involving him becomes searchable again. Every relationship comment he made years ago can suddenly be reposted as though he said it yesterday. That doesn't mean those things are actually connected. It means attention creates connections whether they exist or not. And then Remy Ma's name gets pulled back into the cycle. For some viewers, Remy represents the unresolved chapter they still want explained. They watched years of public loyalty between her and Papoose, so seeing Papoose publicly connected to another woman forces them to rewrite a story they thought they understood. That emotional investment can make people behave like they're personally involved. But they aren't. Neither are we. We're looking at public statements, public appearances, and whatever evidence can actually be verified. Everything else has to remain speculation until somebody directly involved provides something concrete. And that's why the alleged Facebook situation deserves careful attention instead of instant conclusions. If an authenticated post shows Claressa discussing women entering Papoose's direct messages, then we can analyze what she actually said. Not what somebody says she meant. Not what a headline claims she meant. Her actual words. Because there's a huge difference between saying, "Women message my man," and accusing Papoose of entertaining those women. Those are not interchangeable statements. Yet online they can become interchangeable within minutes. And this is where the narrative may be getting flipped completely. Everybody is watching Claressa, asking whether she's worried about women approaching Papoose. But maybe the more revealing question is why so many people appear determined to make her worried. Why keep tagging her? Why keep bringing other women into her comments? Why keep comparing the relationship to his past? If somebody knows Claressa will respond, provoking her becomes a shortcut to attention. And once attention becomes currency, even a relationship can become content. That's why the next move matters more than the latest rumor. Because if Claressa stops responding, the story could lose oxygen. If she keeps responding, the conversation could become even louder. But if Papoose decides to step forward and publicly draw the boundary himself, then suddenly everyone watching may have to reconsider who this controversy was really about in the first place. And that would change everything because the loudest voice in this conversation has mostly been the internet itself. People are watching Claressa Shields react, watching Papoose move through the attention, and then filling every quiet moment with theories. But if Papoose ever decides to address the direct message conversation clearly, the speculation suddenly has something concrete to compete with. Until then, everybody needs to remember that a viral interpretation is not the same thing as a verified statement. That distinction becomes even more important when relationships are involved. Because there's a temptation online to turn every disagreement into evidence that a couple is falling apart. Somebody posts an emotional message? Trouble. Somebody doesn't post their partner for a few days? Trouble. Somebody responds to a disrespectful comment? Apparently that means trouble too. But real relationships aren't social media algorithms. People can be annoyed and still be happy. They can disagree and still be committed. They can establish boundaries without secretly preparing for a breakup. And they can receive attention from outsiders without entertaining it. That last point matters most here. Even if the claim about women entering Papoose's direct messages turns out to be authentic, receiving those messages tells us almost nothing about what Papoose himself is doing. Famous people receive messages constantly. Some are supportive, some are flirtatious, some are completely inappropriate. The recipient doesn't control the send button on somebody else's phone. What they control is their response. And unless credible evidence establishes what Papoose supposedly did with those messages, there's no reason to manufacture a betrayal narrative just because it makes a better headline. But there is something we can analyze. Claressa's public personality. She has never built her image around pretending she doesn't care what anybody thinks. She talks. She responds. She challenges people. Sometimes she jokes. Sometimes she gets serious. That directness is one reason audiences watch her. And it's also why people know exactly which buttons to push. If somebody wants engagement, mentioning Papoose underneath a Claressa post can generate attention. Mentioning Remy Ma can generate even more. Add another woman into the equation and suddenly the comment section starts moving like somebody rang a bell. That's where the story becomes less about jealousy and more about provocation. What happens when thousands of people repeatedly tell someone they should feel threatened? Eventually, the conversation itself can become the pressure. And there's a deeper reason viewers are fascinated by Claressa and Papoose. On paper, their worlds seem completely different. Claressa built her fame through boxing. Papoose built his through hip-hop. She is associated with confrontation and competitive dominance. He has often projected a calmer public presence. That contrast creates curiosity. But people sometimes confuse curiosity with ownership. Fans start believing they deserve explanations about every private interaction because the relationship became public. They don't. There is a line between discussing what celebrities voluntarily share and inventing details about what happens when the cameras disappear. And that line has become extremely blurry here, especially when Remy Ma gets mentioned. Papoose and Remy shared a long public history, and audiences remember